back to the Powered by Factum podcast. Today, I want to talk a little bit about what holds people back in the industry. What is the things that we see and identify as those roadblocks in our industry that, hey, is there a way to address this? Is there a way to at least identify what these issues are and have a solution to it? So with that, let's start with the idea of there are certain formulas in this business. There are success patterns, right? We don't have to go create everything that's out there because all we have to do is go and emulate somebody that has success. And one thing that we're doing at Factum, and you've heard me talk about this before on the Powered by Factum podcast, is it's hard for us to sell when we're trying to scale. And so the question is, how do we do both? How do we get to where we need to be successful in our business, even to start in the business and scale at the same time? It's really difficult, if not near impossible. So the question is, how can we partner with somebody that's already done it? One of the things that we talk about at Factum is that we've built a system here that allows you to grow immediately as you get into the business. This life insurance business that we're in, this industry, is notorious for eating people up because a lot of times people just don't know what to do, what activities to have, or what systems to follow. And so they're trying to create all this, they're trying to do all this at once, but in all reality, it's already laid out. All we have to do is go find those that are successful doing it and say, I can do that. Let me follow that process. So today I want to just touch on some things around that. Obviously, it's a lot deeper than probably we're ever going to cover in a podcast, but it's important for us to understand that there is a process out there. There is a system out there. And there's a lot of people that can do this. But again, we have to be aligned with people that have a similar set of values as we have. And so again, what that means is I've talked to many agents out there. And the first question I try to get to is, hey, do we align with your values as an agent? And I try to be very apparent and upfront with that, and because we have to align with our values. Then the second part comes back to say, hey, do you align with our values? Because if you think about it, it's a two-way street, right? You're inviting me into your business, and I'm also inviting you into our business. So it has to be a win. And that's one of our key components here at Factum, that it's got to be a win scenario or it can't be a deal. Doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that I have a lot of people I know in the industry that we've had conversations, and for right now, it's just not a good fit for where we're at. It might be a good fit 6 months down the road, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, but right now it's not a good deal. So we always want to keep that in mind, is that the timing's got to be right, situation's got to be right, because if we try to put this round peg into a square hole, it never fits. And if it does fit, it creates a lot of friction, and it's not going to last a long time. We're in this business to create impact and really for the long term. And so I just always approach this with the idea that servitude's got to be both ways, right? You got to be able to serve the agent who's our client, but the agent also has to serve Factum. So it has to be both ways. And some people say, well, you should always be serving the agent. But if it doesn't work for both, then neither one is going to be happy. Neither one's going to stick around for a long time. So that's the philosophy around it. So because somebody said, what does it take to be successful in this business? And man, that's a broad question, but I really believe we can narrow that down today. And we're going to talk about this a little bit. First off, I would say that there's a number of things that we have to do. And first is identify what our niche is. What do we want to serve in our marketplace? And this goes back to, a lot of people will say, we got to cast a broad net. You have to, and I would almost agree, but understand where you want to go. It starts with understanding who you are, right? So we have to understand who you are and where you want to go. And eventually you're going to get very narrow in your niche if you want to be super successful in this business. And kind of the best analogy I can put to that is my wife she loves her cooking shows. She loves to be able to watch cooking shows. And we watch some people and they go, hey, that's a very good cook, but that's not a chef. So think about that in our business, is that we have to be focused enough, say, I want to go there, but first I have to start as a cook, which means just I understand recipes, I understand how to put certain combinations together. It's just being a general cook. But as we develop our skills and as we take time and grow an acumen in this business, that means, hey, I can focus in, I can be very narrow to be a very good chef. And so where my chef space is, I love the infinite banking concept. Now, when I started out, it was a very broad. I knew I wanted to be super successful and be able to teach agents and teach clients in that space. But I started out having very broad conversations. But it helped me because it helped me have these conversations. But what it helped me do is it narrowed it in every time I had conversations that I need to eliminate those things that didn't apply to my vision. It comes back down to Gary Keller wrote a book called The One Thing. And if you can really understand that early, it's going to be super helpful. So and that's one of the core books that we read is The One Thing, but it's so important that you say that one thing is where I want to go. So by doing that one thing makes everything else irrelevant or unimportant. And so this is the conversation that we want to have today. And we're going to talk a little bit about it. And again, it's be very broad. We're going to talk about this multiple times over a long period of time. But again, if you like what you hear, I'd do is say subscribe to our channel, to the podcast, or however you're listening to us. Like it, contact us. Let's have conversations because it's important for us to make sure that we're all together. But this will be a good opportunity to have you understand how we think and how we'll go through the process. So, but it really just starts with understanding where you want to go, which starts with understanding who you are first, right? So it's important for us to understand who we are, what our values are. We obviously at Factum, we talk about the 5 areas. We want abundance in all 5 areas of our life. And what does that abundance look like? What are you willing to do in order to get there? So starting out with knowing who you are, understanding what your niche is, how you really want to serve over the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years of this business. Having a vision and going towards that vision. That's the first place where we start. But again, we have to be a cook before we can be a chef. So just understand that it's a journey. It's not an event. So it's always going to be that journey. And then this business, like any business, like anything that's worthwhile doing, is worth being uncomfortable. And so we have to realize that if we want to truly grow, we have to find some positions we're going to be uncomfortable in conversations, coaching, whatever it is, because you want to grow. Growth doesn't come without a little bit of, if you're lifting weights or whatever, you're going to feel some pain the next day. That's growing muscle. If you're running a marathon, now again, I'm not a marathon runner. If you're running a marathon, the first time that you complete a full marathon in practice, man, that's uncomfortable. You're not feeling great. But by the time you do it the 5th, 10th, 12th time, it's not nearly as painful as it was before. So we have to grow. And by growing, we have to stretch ourselves a little bit. So that's one thing. I think the next step is that you have to learn a system. To go out there and kind of try and recreate everything on your own, boy, that's tough. So again, it goes back to, I heard a guy say, success leaves clues. Look what other people are successful doing. People that are successful, what are they doing? And that a lot of times they have a system. And this is so big. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, but just knowing that you have to learn a system, because otherwise you're just wandering in the forest. So learning a system is like learning to read a map when you're out in the forest. You want to get to a certain peak. You can tell where the valleys are. You can tell where the hilltops are. You know where you need to get to. Learning a system is like having that map. And then at the end of the day, trusting your map, right? So one of the things that I learned a long time ago, my older brother taught this to me. He always made the comment, trust your compass. And I didn't quite get what he meant until he said, you got to trust your compass. Because if you trust your instincts, or you trust, well, I think it's over here, and the greatest example I ever had with that is we were out hunting one time out in the mountains, and it was foggy and you couldn't see peaks, and it was just really and I looked at my compass and I'm like, this is wrong. I need to go here. I need to go right. And the compass was telling me to walk straight ahead, but I instinctively knew that I need to go right. Well, I could hear this in my back of my brain, trust your compass. So I said, okay, I'm going to follow my compass. I know I need to go this direction, straight ahead. So I went straight ahead, fog lifted. I was a little bit off my mark, but quite frankly, I was a whole lot closer. If I would have been right, I would have been down in some massive deadfall, ugly parts of this timber that was out there and completely off to it, just because where I thought I needed to go wasn't where I truly needed to go, because I wasn't trusting a system. And that's really what this insurance business is about too. Any business, quite frankly, is you got to have a system. You got to trust that system. Trying to recreate it on the fly rarely ever works. So learn and trust your system, because confidence and conviction is ultimately where you want to get to in this business. You want to have tremendous confidence in who you are and what your message is, and conviction in the process and what we're selling, which is taking control of banking function in your life. That's where I'm at. So they're teaching people the infinite banking concept. So I have conviction in that. I have trust in a process, and I have trust in myself. And so anyhow, just learn a system and have a process, because if you don't have a process that's duplicatable, then you might have success one day, but how do you go back and redo it again? So there's a real issue there. And then you need to learn basic presentation and basic presentation skills. So think about that from a standpoint and this is one of the things I'm really proud about Factum is that we provide the whole system. We've taken a group of guys that have a lot of trial and error, a lot of mistakes have been made on our part. And we said, hey, let's systematize this. Let's put this together so people can grow without having the scale because the scaling's already been done. I was listening to a podcast, some guys were talking about having a spreadsheet of keeping names on there. And I'm like, wow, that is so difficult because you get to a certain level, you're going to go, man, I get past 65 names. It's really hard for me to keep track of who I've seen and what I've done. Even if you have a great spreadsheet process, why not have a business management system? And when I say a business management system, that is way more than a CRM, quite frankly. And one thing we have at Factum is we spend a lot of time through innovation because that's one of our core beliefs is that we have to have unrelenting innovation, is that we've created a business management system, which allows us to see, hey, who do we have? Who do we know? Where are we at in the process? When we talk to these people, what are the notes? And is it shareable? Am I working with a mentor? Can they see that? That's already been done for us. We don't need to spend our time doing that. We just have to go find people to be able to tell the story. And then what story do we tell? Oh, by the way, we have of presentations. Hop on board. Look at what we have. We talk about it from a foundational standpoint where anybody gets it is that you have to have a strong foundation before you can grow to the top of the pyramid. So we're talking about how do you grow a strong foundation with proper amount of savings and the right idea that you have to grow in your knowledge and your understanding of the finances that are around you, and then have the right amount of savings to do that. That's the foundation that we talk about. And so that's the presentations we take out to people that we provide to agents, because it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that, because that's where everybody wants to talk about the real fancy and exciting stuff, but they forget about the foundational stuff. So if you don't have a solid foundation, just when you're top of your pyramid, your investments and all the other quote unquote fun stuff is starting to blossom and grow, it's going to crumble the foundation because something's going to happen, right? Market's going to crash, big liability claim, whatever it might be. If we don't have the ability to weather those storms, then everything we did the last 10 years might be gone. So anyhow, that's the story, having a presentation and being able to deliver it with confidence and conviction. The next part is that kind of comes back to stick to the system. Sticking to the system is huge. What does that mean, stick to the system? If you're out doing one thing one day and you say, that didn't work, the question we have to ask is what part of that didn't work? Was your messaging? Was it who you invited? Was it who you had in the room? Was it what you were saying? But is the message wrong? So don't go change the messages. Don't go understand and believe in the system that's there that's going to work. And if something doesn't work, don't see it as a failure. Say, oh, I can learn from that and I can be better from that point going forward. So if you believe in what you're saying and believe in your message, but it didn't work the first time out, let's find a way to correct that because there's something in there. But don't go and change your messaging because then people are going to get really confused about who you are, right? So it's like I think if anybody's listened to our podcast, they understand the story of our CPA being our plumber at the same time, right? So are you a CPA or your plumber, right? So if they don't know who you are, if you don't know who you are and what you believe in, then how's anybody else supposed to do that? So again, having that stick to the system and stick to the process, which is part of that is the right message, which we've developed over a long period of time. We've tested it and we understand that this message is a strong message, right? So people want this. We just have to say, can you get enough people to hear this message and can you deliver it effectively? And then really just engage in coaching and mentoring. That's the biggest thing. That's one of the things that we have a process to educate. We have a process to coach and we have a process to mentor people to help grow them. But again, at the end of the day, you have to just keep it simple. Keep it simple. Pick 2 things that you can work on, that you can find success in, that we can celebrate. And then when you get good at those, then add 2 more things. Don't try to be a chef right out of the gate. Start with being a cook. Let's be a good cook before we try to be a chef. Let's know where our niche is going to be, but cast that wide net, but with a specific message. And so we can find the right amount of people that need to come into to the message that we're trying to deliver. So those are the key points as far as what an agent, somebody that wants to work, and I'll call them a strategist, if they want to come work with Factum, just understand that's our approach, right? We have a niche. We have a specific niche that we work in, which is this idea of using cash value whole life insurance and using it in some form to support the infinite banking concept, or And we can talk about that at a later date too, but that's really what our niche is, and having an understanding of that. So then the next part is, what does it take to grow my business? And again, at Factum, this is the beautiful part about it, is that, again, we've taken a group of agents through a lot of trial and error, successful agents, and said, what are the things that work? What are the things that don't work? Because not knowing what doesn't work is probably most valuable as far as, hey, what works? But again, we've observed other agents. We know other successful agents, like, hey, we share with them what we know. The successful with us, they share with us, because we're all about abundance, and we like to give as much as we're ever going to give, as we're ever going to receive. And so we share it across the line with very successful people, and we know there's a pattern. So we've built a system. And if you can imagine that there's maybe a business system that's maybe 6 levels deep, and we'll get into this at a later podcast, but we built a system where all you have to do is come and plug in at a level 4 type of system. So a level 4 type of business, because the systems are built there. The knowledge and understanding of this is all there. So what do I mean by all that? I want to get real clear about where I want to go. It's like, with agents, I'm talking about, how do you build a long-term business, right? So, and I would say there's 3 key points. There's knowledge, and not knowledge of life insurance, but knowledge of how to run a business. The science and the theory behind how do you run your business that allows you to have predictable outcomes based on certain activities. So let me say that one more time. Knowledge is just knowledge of the business. So you have an understanding of the science of the business that allows you to predict the future outcome of your business based on a certain amount of activities. So what's controllable there? What does that mean? Well, that's the first one, is the knowledge. Second one is having an administration organization. And we'll talk about that. And it's just a system that guides your activities on a daily basis, right? You already know what those activities are. And then what's guiding me on a daily basis. And this is what we're talking about, a system. So today I'm going to dig into just a little bit of having a system or process, so we know where we want to go with this. And the third one is just this mastery of client acquisition process. These are all very deep. We'll get into these at a later date on this podcast, but I just want to lay the groundwork so you have an understanding what we teach and what we coach within Factum. So these are the 3 key areas. And in other areas, we call them leads, leverage, and loyalty, right? Let's just stick with the 3 points, right? So the 3 points are knowledge and have an understanding of the science of the business. And this is really important. If you don't know what it takes to get to a certain point, how are you going to get there? How do you know that you're doing the right amount of things? So what are the activities you need to do today in order to generate enough business down the road, right? So how many people do you need to see to be able to write your first case, or your first 10 cases, or your first 20 cases? Getting an understanding of this is going to be the very first thing you really need to do if you're really going to run a business. If you're going to be purposeful about your business, you need to have an understanding that, I need to put 200 people in my database, because I know if I have 200 people in my database, more than likely through great coaching and a great message and a great system, I can help place enough policies, maybe with between 10 and 20 of those people. Okay, so that's the number. So when people start with us, I always say, the minimum you have to have is at least 150 to 200 people in your database. And that's not the end. That's the beginning, because that needs to constantly grow and grow at a fast pace, because you need to have that. Consider that your inventory. You need to be able to grow that inventory, because we understand that our message and what we're doing in our process is very efficient. So we can take those people, consider them at the head of your pipeline. Those will be the people that come out the back end of the pipeline. So having that system and having that knowledge of what it takes to make that happen. So, we start with this conversation is like, what can you do? How can you garner these names? There's a lot of different ways to add people to your database. And again, this goes back to our conversation I heard a guy talking about, is that he keeps everything on a Google spreadsheet. I'm like, man, it seems so difficult, because how do you manage that many names? So that really leads into this other area called administration and organization. Right? You have a system, not a Google spreadsheet. I don't consider that a system, to guide your activities on a daily and monthly and a yearly basis. We have that system. We have a thing called Factum 15, right? Factum 15 is just a book that we use that tracks every day. Here's what our activities are. We know these are success activities. So success activities for us are doing certain things, right? We're having a certain amount of meetings on a daily basis or a weekly basis. We're making a certain amount of phone calls. We're having, lunch with some of our referral partners. With just all these different processes. We know these are activities that we have to do, but understand that these are activities. They're not passivities, they're activities. You have to go out there and be active in doing these things. And these things will lead to success. And the rest of it, which is being able to do the presentation, understanding how to do an illustration, that'll all come. And we have mentors and people to help you with that process. But the thing that you have to do is, okay, I have to have a clear pathway. Again, trust my compass that says, if I do these things, I'll know I'll be successful. And part of that is continue to add people to that database or to your, CRM, or again, people start with a Google sheet that works great for 3 days. And after that, the question is, do you want to be in a real business or do you want to be in a perpetual mom and pop type of business? So again, we want to help you grow a strong, successful business. And I really just don't believe you can do that if you're just working off a Google sheet. We need to have a system to help nurture and keep relationships, because not everybody's going to buy right away with what you have to sell. Let's say that again, not everybody's going to buy right away with what you have to sell. Doesn't mean they won't do it in the future. I've had clients come back 3, 4, 5 years later from when I've talked to them, but I've kept them in the process. I've had conversations with them. I've kept them invited to our events that we're doing. 5 years later, they're coming back to me and say, I'm ready now. Basically, they said, I see something happened in their life that changed them. Well, if you have that on a Google sheet and it's not confused, or you're writing it down in a book somewhere, how do you keep them in a process and keeping them engaged over a 5-year period? Because there's a science to this, is that, if you can get people the first year of your business, you can get 5 to 10% of the people the first year of your database. That's successful. But then how about the rest of those? How about the other 90%? Well, we know that you're going to capture about 50% of those people if you have a system over the next 5 years. But this doesn't all happen the first year. So we have to have a system to make that happen. And so this goes back to, where do we have, how many people can we actually keep in our thought process? Or how many people can we manage? How many relationships can we manage is probably the best way to go about it. And there was a study called the Dunbar, I think it's called the Dunbar study. I'll have to check on that, but I think it's called the Dunbar study. But basically what it says is that we have a tight circle of friends. Those are 5 to 10 people that basically are loved ones. Depends how big a family. If you're like Kyle, you have a very large family. I've come from the last of 9. So we have a lot of relationships that are pretty tight. But really, in that family, there's probably 4 or 5 people that I'm really tight with, and the rest are maybe just a little bit further outside that circle. Then you have maybe 50 friends, then 150 meaningful relationships or contacts, 500 acquaintances, and 1,500 people you can recognize. So, and people will migrate back and forth amongst those different groups. So how are you keeping track of all those people? You can't do that on a Google spreadsheet. So you need to have a business management system. You have to have a process. And again, this goes back to trusting a system and trusting a process. And we have that. We built all that. That's what's so beautiful, is that you don't have to go scale to be able to do that, because you can't scale and sell at the same time. So we have that. You can just plug right into it. And we have a process for anybody that's in that system. So that's why it's so valuable to go do these activities, to feed into that system, to be able to educate them or keep them engaged. So when they are ready, they're thinking of you and having you be able to do that. So your job in that meantime is just adding people. That's what people say, well, what do I have to do? What activity do I have to do? Is add as many people as you possibly can all the time to your system. So when you have something to say, because you have something to say all the time, you can manage who's hearing that. They've committed to say, hey, I'll listen to what you have to say. You put them in a system, and now they can hear what you have to say. And you're going to leverage automation to make that happen. So we have those systems all built out for you. So just remember that this is what we're talking about, right? You have to know how many people you need to see, how many conversations you have to have, how many appointments you have to be able to close and hit certain goals. So we have to be able to have that scientific conversation. This is, again, if we take it back to the cook and the chef conversation, this is the ingredients. You have to have, my wife she's a cook. I would say she's almost a chef. She's probably a chef, but she doesn't like to bake. But there's a difference. But the understanding of the ratios of what goes with what, you have to have this time frame and these things have to happen in this time frame. She understands all that. And a very basic cook will take one ingredient and fry it and then set it aside and go do the next one. Well, if you're trying to do that for 50 or 100 people people are getting cold food or it's not enjoyable. So that's my whole point is if you truly want to be a chef in this business, if you want to truly be at the pinnacle of the people that are staying in this business who are super successful, the process is being that chef. And that means engaging in a system. And that system will keep you on the road, will keep you in the direction you're going, is your compass to where you need to be. So anyhow, that's the having the administration and organization. So you can have some predictable outcomes, right? I'm going to do these activities. And I believe if I'm doing these activities, I'm going to come back and say, I know if you're doing these activities, but you have to have the belief that it's going to work. You're going to have some predictable outcomes. Now, are they going to be exact? No, but we know the activities are the most important things. So those are the things that we have to get comfortable with is I'm going to get comfortable doing these activities. I have to add people. I have to add more and more people each and every day that need to hear my message. And just because they're not ready to hear it today doesn't mean they're not ready to hear it tomorrow. And I think that's the real key. And so where do we start? We start with 150 to 200. I think that's a good place to start. I know that's a good place to start. I'm not going to say it's thinking. I know it is. And then we want to keep adding to it. I mean, ultimately, we want to have, if we could have all 1,500, remember the number I said is that there's 1,500 people that you may recognize. Imagine having all 1,500 people in a database. And again, we're talking about these 1,500 people might move from being close friends to being acquaintances to being business partners or whatever they might be. And they're going to move across there. But if everybody's hearing your message, somebody will eventually raise their hand, right? Somebody will eventually raise their hand and say, hey, Wade, I love what you're saying. I want and I need what you have. Hey, that's great. Let me get with you. Let me start the process for that. But how do I know who that was? How do I know unless I'm having direct one-on-one relationships? It's hard to do. So I have to have them in my system and I have to be providing content on a regular basis. So they're hearing what I'm saying, hearing my message. And in my presentation that I'm doing that I recorded, now I'm leveraging technology so I can record a presentation and I can send it out to everybody that I know in my database. And who knows? People that have maybe sat on the sidelines, watched me for a lot of years are going, okay, I'm ready for him because A, I've grown in my knowledge and understanding and my confidence and conviction. That's a lot of it. Or B, hey, something happened in my life that I need what Wade's offering. So again, I'm beating the dead horse. I understand that, but just understand that's number two is to have the administration organization. And we've built that at Factum. That's the real key is that doesn't need to be built by you. And when we understand the numbers, so we understand 1 and 2. The third part is just the mastery of client acquisition. I think this is a bit of more of a soft skill, but you have to be a master at acquiring clients. And a lot of this will be, and again, notice I didn't say prospects, it's acquiring clients. These aren't just adding people to your database. Okay, now people are ready to hear a bit deeper of your message. So what's your presentation? What does that look like, right? So you know your numbers and you're blocking your calendar out for the one thing to grow in your mastery of all these different skills. And so now you have the ability to say, okay, I want to have a conversation with somebody. How does that look like? Now, we can have a lot of conversations early on in our career, and they'll be fine. You're going to get some people go, yeah, I hear what you're saying. And they're going to be the early adapters. Where we want to find the mastery is be able to take our message and our beliefs and align our belief with those people that would be in alignment with our belief and say, how can I be of service to you? And that starts with listening and understanding what their issue is, what their problem is. And if we can say that, if we can do that, if we can go in and ask really great questions and find out what their pain point is, and if we have that solution, then why shouldn't we provide that solution to them? And I think that's the real key, and that's the mastery. And this is the beautiful part about where we're at with Factum is that we have people that are very passionate about teaching this type of thing, right? So this is the very soft skill side of the business that I don't think people appreciate, is that this is not an event. This is a process and we get better and better. This goes back to being that chef. By adding one little ingredient or taking one ingredient away or instead of adding salt to something, you add a different spice or herb. And again, I'm talking a little bit out of my realm because I'm not a chef, but I've seen people can take 3 or 4 simple ingredients and make them into a masterpiece. Well, that didn't happen overnight. That took time and consistency over time to be able to become that good at it. So that would probably be another advice I would have to people is be consistent, stay in there, have a belief in what you're doing and then keeping things simple, finding your niche and then just going and doing and repeating and doing it again to the point where it becomes almost second nature. And this moves into that area of unconscious confidence. So we need to eventually get there. So anyhow, the mastery of the soft sales skills, we have a whole coaching program that just talks about that. We use a couple of different methods. One of the ones we really like is Socratic dialogue method, where it's just designed to have us understand that we need to find understanding with people, right? There's a great book with Phil Jones, Exactly What to Say. This helps us get out of our own way. If we're asking great questions and we can get out of our own way to find understanding where people are at, that's going to be the really important part. And again, this does not happen overnight. This is a process. This is really a lifelong learning event that we should get better at every day. So that's just one thing that we do, and understanding how people want to receive information. But I'm just going to go back and recap is what does powered by Factum really mean? And I've talked about a lot, and what does a new agent need to do in order to make this thing happen? I've thrown out there a lot of things, but just understand that if we have the science and understand the science of how this business works, what we have to do on a regular basis to make it happen, what are the activities we need to do? First thing, understanding the activities that we need to do. Second one is having a process that we can follow. Presentation, a business management system where we can see our clients or our prospects, what stage they're at, if they're watching the videos, all that stuff needs to be in a system. And then somebody to help mentor and teach us on these soft skills about how do we have what I call a client acquisition process, which isn't selling, it's a client acquisition process. A client to me is somebody that I'm serving at a very high level. So that's the things that need to be happening. And then what does it take from the agent to be able to do it is like help identify who you are, which will help you identify, hey, what niche do I need to work in? I'm going to cast a wide net, but I'm going to work towards this specific niche as I grow in my skills and my abilities. Having a belief in a system and sticking to it, and just have a little bit of doggedness to it. I know this is going to work, and then go. And then if it didn't work exactly like you thought it would, go back and retry it again. Make some changes. Don't make a lot of changes because you want to keep things simple. 2 or 3 things at the very most. 1 or 2 things probably at the most. Apply those. Get real good at that. And then the next step is apply the next 1 or 2 things that need to happen. So we have a whole system to help support that, to help you bring along the way with that. But just understand that's the mindset you have to enter in this. It's not difficult if you say, I'm going to plug into the system and let it work. But you have to have that belief that it's going to work. Trust your compass. You want to be a chef, but you have to trust what that process looks like. And part of that is just growing yourself and growing your abilities. But you have to understand what those abilities are and then how we can grow them. But we're here to help. We have mentorship. We have training and coaching on a regular basis, like weekly basis. So we're here to help. We're here to grow you into the maximum potential that you can possibly be. Because if we're going to make an impact in this world, if we're going to make the type of impact that Factum wants to make, we can't do it by ourselves. We need an army of people that that do believe the same thing we believe. And then that's where we're going to make the impact in this world. We're going to change this industry. We're going to change this country by what we're teaching. And I'm so excited about that. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And again, if you hop on the Powered by Factum, you'll see some of our content. You'll see what we're doing. It's super exciting where we're headed. So thank you so much for indulging me. I would just have you go back and we'll break these things down on a much deeper basis going off in the future. But just know that those are the things that you have to understand. If you're going to be successful and you want to get into this business, or maybe you're already in this business, but you're like, I've hit a plateau, I've hit a ceiling, I can't grow more. It's because we can refine those. It's not because you don't know these things. These are things that are not new, but it's just who can help us refine those, or who can help us grow through that barrier. So we're here to help. We're here to serve. And I look forward to talking to you soon.